for the Susan Taylor Podcast, where we discuss the yoga of mind, medicine, and healing. Author of Feeling Good Matters, Sexual Radiance, and the Vital Energy Program, Dr. Taylor imparts authentic knowledge and practical tools that inspire, educate, and empower us to be a healing force for positive change. So join us and take your life and our planet to the next level.
Hello and welcome to episode 24, The Future of Well-Being. When I looked up the definition of well-being in the dictionary, it said the state of being happy, healthy, or prosperous. I'd like to say it's a state of being happy, healthy, and prosperous. Prosperous in our way of thinking, believing, and feeling gratitude. Well-being is a skill, and the skill can be learned just as we learn to play a musical instrument. Except the instrument that I'm referring to is called mind. Mind is our inner instrument. When we learn to train the mind to collect, contain, and focus its energy, that serves as a key to well-being. And the more you practice this skill of well-being, the better you get at it. So the more we practice training our mind or training the energy of the mind through focus, the better we get at it. And there's some science behind that, and I'd like to cover some of the science today and then give some practical steps for well-being. Your body is an activity, and each year all the cells become new. Did you know that how you feel changes every cell in your body, and also how you feel even changes your genes? And science backs that up. Science and research thinks that it knows human biology and the information that it obtains is very correct. It's allopathic way of thinking. However, it's not entirely true because with what we think we know, disease rates for cancer, malaria, Alzheimer's, and AIDS really haven't changed. And the biggest epidemic right now is addictive behavior. We're addicted to drugs, reality TV, shopping, by the way, is the number one distraction, social media, and I can just go on with a list. Researchers have tried to come up with the constituents that allow someone to experience well-being, and Richard Davidson from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, many of you may have heard of him. He does a lot of work with mindfulness and neuroscience, does some phenomenal work. Well, he devoted his time studying the brain circuitry with the mindfulness techniques, as I just mentioned. And from his work in studying the brain circuitry, much progress has been made in understanding the parts of the brain that are influenced by our emotions and thoughts. And from this research, he came up with 4 constituents and identified them to strengthen the neural circuits that seem to be associated and support of our sense of well-being. And the premise is that if we exercise these circuits, they will strengthen. And the 4 skills are resilience, outlook, attention, and generosity. And we can do subsets of them, but they're the four skills that he identified, and they can actually provide the substrate for enduring change, which can help to promote a higher level of well-being in our lives. When teaching the why, what, and how to focus the energy of the mind, I take these concepts from the neuroscientists and that they provide for us, and I bring it into a practical strategic set of habits, because we really need the practical. We need to take the science and bring it into practice if we're going to create benefit for ourselves. It's great to know the science, but the science must be put into practice, as I've always said, where science meets practice. And the result is meant to reflect a sustainable well-being from the inside out. So where do we start with this well-being? I always like to say we go in the direction of the self. And I'm talking about the big self, not the little I, me, mine. I'm talking about the self of all. And that self is our awareness of who we are. So how do we change our future of well-being? What do we need to do? Well, we need to establish a self-directed biological transformation. You've heard me say we could change our brain with self-directed neuroplasticity. We know that neuroplasticity is the ability to change the brain. And Richie Davidson from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, as I just mentioned him, he's brought up a lot of that with neuroplasticity. Our brain can change. So self-directed neuroplasticity would mean that we use our awareness, our consciousness, because self-directed says that it's our awareness and consciousness. That is the most fundamental thing that we have. And this consciousness expresses itself as thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, memories, and includes our personal relationships and our social information and behaviors. It's how we treat others on the planet, within our communities, and treating our planet in general, our environment. So this is our consciousness, our awareness. So we could actually direct it with training our mind to do that. So to be self-directed implies that you're the creator of your own universe, and in this case, your own strategies for well-being. So self-directed biological transformation is similar to self-directed neuroplasticity, as I've mentioned in past blogs and podcasts and even trainings, because it becomes under your control. We don't wait for someone to do it for us. It's under our control. It's how you direct the energy of your mind and the habits that you create for the body and mind that determine the direction of your well-being. It's simply stated. We have habits that we create that will dictate our own well-being. The planet and the universe are alive, and you and I have good fortune of being a human being with the awareness and that powerful instrument called mind, that when we train it to focus, we can accomplish anything. Remember, focus the energy of the mind, because the energy of the mind is the essence of life. You know, we've all heard, I can do this if I put my mind to it. Well, what does that mean? It means to focus that energy of the mind. When we focus the energy of our mind, we can direct the habits that we want to create for well-being. Let's turn now and look at some of these inner skills and how to develop them. Well, we develop inner skills by expanding our awareness. How do we expand our awareness? Well, that's what well-being is all about. And how do we do it? We must expand our awareness by asking ourselves, who am I? Well, we're more than the body and the mind, and more than our senses. Who are we? Always ask that question, who am I? And wait for the answer. What do I want? What is it that you want out of life? Why have you come? What's your purpose? What's your, as we say, what's your dharma? Why have you come? Why have you taken on a human form? What have you come to do, to accomplish, so that you feel fulfilled and have that sense of well-being? And what am I grateful for? Asking these questions, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? And what am I grateful for? Is the first way to expand our awareness, because then we become aware of these things and aware of ourselves. We must live these questions. Life will give you the answer, perhaps not immediately, not just after this podcast, but the answers will come if you sincerely ask those questions. When you find yourself with perhaps not feeling well or in a state of poverty consciousness, ask yourself these questions. Even ask yourself the question, what am I grateful for? Many people have fear around money. And then just sit for a moment and say, what am I grateful for? And that will pass. This will cure the issue and expand your awareness. So expand our awareness is the first skill we need to develop. The next skill we need to develop is focus the mind. When we focus our mind, we become happy. A focused mind, as you've heard me say, is a happy mind. To paraphrase the title of a very important paper, and I believe I brought it up in the last podcast or the one before, it was published several years ago by a group of social psychologists at Harvard. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And in this particular study, researchers used smartphones to query people as they were out and about in the real world, essentially asking 3 questions. What are you doing right now? Where is your mind right now? Is it focused on what you're doing, or is it focused elsewhere? Maybe in texting or waiting for that text, because we have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. How happy or unhappy are you right now? And what they found across a large group of adults in America, they found that people spend an average of 47% of their waking life not paying attention to what they're doing. 47% of the time. Could you imagine that? That's quite a lot of time. So can you envision a world where the number goes down a little by even 5%? Imagine what an impact that might have on our productivity, showing up, being present with another person in a relationship, even if the relationship is a casual relationship, and deeply listening to what someone has to say. Training the energy of your mind is the essential to well-being and prosperity, and I'll say it over and over again. I just covered expand your awareness for well-being, focus your mind for well-being, and then find your center of excellence. Apply your mind to build strength and stamina. Remember, the body and mind are one. Over and over again, I repeat these statements because they're so true. People want to work with the body. That's great because the mind and body are one. People want to just work with the mind, but the mind and body are one. The body is a physical manifestation of what the mind is just more subtle in what is represented in the body. To find our center of excellence, we must use a method to develop our self-awareness, and meditation is one such technique. Today we all hear about the mindfulness coming from the Buddhist tradition, Vipassana, which brings mindfulness actually. There's also transcendental meditation, a mantra-based meditation that comes from the tradition of Agni Shankara in India, and then there's centering prayer from the monks, which is a reflective on self-inquiry. And there's also intentional living with metacognition. Then there's focusing your awareness, centering on the breath and mantra. It's a combination of mindfulness with concentration. I always say mindfulness needs the essential component of concentration to make it a complete form. You know, I am partial to focused awareness, but I suggest that you don't get bogged down within one methodology. If you prefer any of the others, by all means do it, since all methodologies include awareness of body, breath, relationships, our ecosystem, and the awareness of awareness itself. So whether you choose to do centering prayer, transcendental meditation, Buddhist mindfulness meditation, any of those are fine, or focused awareness, because you're always including the awareness of body, breath, relationships, our ecosystem, and the awareness of awareness itself. So once we expand our awareness, we focus our mind, we find our center of excellence with some form of meditation, we can rewrite our story with a positive outlook. Well-being results in having an energetic body and a radiant mind. Those with optimal well-being are very attractive and charismatic. They possess the learned skills of a joyful, energetic body, a reflective, alert mind, one that's focused and present, loving and a compassionate heart. I always say we have to work with the body through our gut, our hara. We have to work with our mind we work with the head. And we have to have a loving, compassionate heart. So the hara, head, and heart all comprise lightness of well-being and living with well-being. People who are very healthy and have an energetic body and radiant mind nourish themselves with the right ingredients. They have a body that moves and flows with energy. They're not distracted, they're present. They're present in spirit, not checking iPhones when talking to someone or gazing at their watch. They do one thing at a time and do it with presence. And they're friendly and they exude warmth towards themselves and towards others. They're independent of criticism and flattery, and I always like to stress this. It's a very profound trait that not being affected. We live in the world and remain above. Remember when I spoke about in Feeling Good Matters, step 12 is to live in the world, or even the commentary on the book, live in the world and remain above. We step above the criticism and flattery, and it's a very profound trait to develop. It creates a lightness of being and a fundamental characteristic of someone who is extraordinary. So my suggestion to you, or my thoughts to you, are create a story for yourself. We all love stories. In your story, ask yourself, where did I come from? Who am I? Where am I going? How will I get there? And when I get there, how will I be different from now? How will my life be different? What is your story? And write one for yourself and live that story. Don't just talk about it. Make sure every good story is a love story, because love conquers all. It needs to be, that element needs to be in it, the element of generosity and giving. Good people win and the bad people lose, right? So act out your story. Get people to tell you their story. Who are you? What's your purpose? Everyone has that unique story, and it's a collective story, actually. We have a collective consciousness, and our stories are collective. What kind of life do you want? People always say that they were lucky, they were in the right place at the right time when they have some success and prosperity. Or they'll say, God was on my side. Flow only comes when you know what you want. So when you know what you want, then that's what happens. And your purpose and what is calling, what's calling you, that's what creates the flow and the well-being, and everything becomes a flow for you in a positive direction. The takeaway for today, take 10 minutes a day in silence and reflect. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I want? And where will I go? And write this as your story. Well, this brings me to the end of this episode. And if you'd like to be notified weekly for new podcasts, please subscribe. The Susan Taylor podcast does come out weekly, and you can get it on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Also, you can go to the website, susantaylor.org, subscribe, and we'll deliver it to you each week. Contact me at susantaylor.org if you have any questions, comments, or feedback. And I'd like to say thank you for listening. Until next time, remain calm, consciously aware, living in the moment. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.